Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ave Maria Press Professional Development Webinar Series. In this webinar, Shannon Wimp-Schmidt will discuss how leaders across denominations are joining in a movement to accompany young people through relational discipleship radically focused on Jesus, and also looking at some research-based strategies to help us find new ideas to share the gospel. My name is Erin Pierce. I am the Interim Publicist and Strategic Partnerships Manager at Ave Maria Press. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. Questions can be sent to our presenter using the question section on the GoToWebinar panel, and I'll read as many of those as possible at the end of the presentation today. This webinar is being recorded, and I will send you a link to the recording via email tomorrow. With that, I would like to welcome and introduce our presenter today. Shannon Wimp-Schmidt is the Content Director for 10x10 Youth Ministry Collaboration and co-author of the award-winning Ave Maria Press book, Fat Luther, Slim Pickens, A Black Catholic Celebration of Faith, Tradition, and Diversity. She has more than a decade of experience in youth and pastoral ministry at both the parish and diocesan level. Shannon's work has been featured in the Catholic Standard, Femme Catholic, and the National Catholic Reporter. She is also a regular contributor to U.S. Catholic Magazine, as well as the co-host of the Plaid Skirts and Basic Black podcast. Shannon, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Erin. I'm so delighted to join everybody and to share a little bit about what we're doing at 10x10. So.
Absolutely. Well, always a pleasure to have you. I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm so excited that we're all together today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the 10x10 collaboration and what we're doing, and more about some of the strategies and research that we have been engaged with. So before we start any of this, I want to make sure that we all know and state one fact, that the good news of Jesus Christ is good news for this generation. It is hope and salvation for this generation and for every generation. That has not changed in over 2,000 years, and it will not change no matter what, because Christ is with us now and always. And also, every day, we are doing good work for the kingdom of God. Through our ministries, young people, old people, and everyone in between are coming to know and love Jesus Christ even more, and we thank God for that. The church has been doing good ministry and continues to do good ministry. However, despite all of the good things that we are doing, we actually know that it is not enough. The religious landscape of America is changing and continues to change. We know, if we look at statistics, that those we call the nones, N-O-N-E-S, who have no religion or report no religious affiliation, continues to increase every year. And that trend only increases and accelerates when we're talking about Gen Z, who are the current young adults and teenagers, and Gen Alpha, who are the young kids, who my kids are Gen Alpha, that many of us are raising. And while many of them continue to increase in number and some are completely done with the church, we also know that some are still what we might call rather than nuns. That they're skeptical of the church, but they're not all the way out the door yet. And for better or for worse, if we look at the religious landscape of America, we are at a tipping point. And so I wanted to show a short video that we created at 10x10 to talk a little bit about this and introduce some of what we're doing.
The church is at a tipping point. In a cultural moment full of distraction from growing division, we're leaving the next generation unseen and with unmet needs. And they're abandoning their faith at an alarming rate by more than 1 million every year. That's 2 more people just by the time you finish watching this video. This is important for all of us. The next generation, as they approach adulthood, isolated and anxious about the state of the world, without the hope of Jesus or the support from a community of faith. And for the church, as we miss the opportunity to learn from and care for a generation of leaders, thinkers, and innovators whose perspective and tenacity will shape the next chapter of the church and its work in the world. So what can we do? We're making a 10-year commitment to the next generation, to change the way we listen to, support, and disciple together, and to partner with leaders in reaching and caring for the next generation. We don't have all the answers, but we know it's time to start the conversation. Why? To see the world that could be, where young people are engaged in honest relationships with Jesus within a community of faith. To see congregations and parishes practice the way of Jesus, expressing God's love to all generations. To see faith matter more to 10 million young people over the next 10 years. But it'll take all of us. Together, we can make this tipping point a turning point. Make the 10 by 10 commitment. Visit 10by10.org to join the movement.
So as we said, the church is at a tipping point. But we here at 10 by 10 hope that that is actually a turning point, not only for the church, but for this generation. And so our mission as a collaboration is to make faith matter more for 10 million young people over the next 10 years in the spirit of John 10:10. And as we all probably know, John 10:10 is the point where Jesus says, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. What we hope for at 10 by 10 is that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and all the generations after them will know a church that is vibrant and alive with the hope of Jesus Christ, and that they will find in Jesus Christ abundant life. And so we are inviting Christians across all denominations, across states, ethnicities, you name it, whatever line in the sand we tend to draw, we're asking ourselves to erase that line in the sand and come together to stack hands to make faith matter more for young people. And while there are many, many excellent strategies that Christians across denominations and across the country are working towards in order to reach young people, our goal at 10 by 10 is to look at the best of research and to make that available and to build training and resources around that for people who are engaged in ministry. And so when we look at the best of research on youth ministry and youth discipleship, what we have found and where we put our stake in the ground is that we want to shift what we are doing in ministry to focus on relational discipleship, radically focused on Jesus. This is the strategy that we would say is going to help just about everyone move towards making faith matter more, move towards inviting young people into encounter with Christ and into relationship with Christ. That it's not just about the programs and the things that we put on to attract young people. It's actually about walking with them on the journey of discipleship through accompaniment and to focus on Jesus Christ and their identity as disciples of Jesus Christ who know and love him. And so some of the way that we do that is through working with various partners, but we also do that through focusing on 7 discipleship emphases. Again, these are based in research. We curate and commission resources. We create training around these 7 discipleship emphases in order to help leaders grow in their capacity for relational discipleship. So what we are doing at 10 by 10 is focusing on youth leaders, senior leaders such as pastors, priests, directors of evangelization, directors of religious ed, you name it, to help you grow as a ministry leader in these key areas so that relational discipleship can become a reality in your ministry. And first and foremost, that starts with our own personal growth. If we are not disciples ourselves, we cannot invite other people into discipleship with Jesus Christ. So if you go to 10by10.org, you can find more resources there. We'll get into more of those in a few minutes. But first and foremost, we start with ourselves. We also focus on building teams of mentors. What we see in research is that the more intergenerational relationships that young people have with mentors in their faith community, the more likely they are to stay involved in church and to live lifelong discipleship. So if we think about that old adage of we have to have one chaperone for every 5 people on the trip. Let's say we're going on a youth ministry bus ride to the local amusement park. I don't know, whatever you do for your youth ministry. That we're so often focused on finding that one adult to chaperone 5 youth, but actually we need to flip that on its head. That if we're thinking about really building mentorship into our ministry, we need to focus on having 5 adults to accompany and mentor and walk alongside one young adult. And I've seen that in my own life as a parent as a really important aspect of youth ministry. And in particular, I was thinking about my oldest son who just recently started playing football at his Catholic school. And I was not really excited for him to start playing football, I can tell you, because his mom was concerned about all the injuries and all of these things. But he started playing football, and the coaches that he had there were so engaged with him in not only making sure he was a good player, but making sure he was focused on his schoolwork. They talked about the importance of family. They prayed together. They talked about faith. They went to mass together. And the way that I saw him start to transform as a young person and start to see that all of those things matter to mature and to grow, and to have him have adults who he thought were cool and interesting and important in his life to tell him that faith mattered and that going to mass together was important. It was amazing as a parent. It helped transform him in a way that I could never have done as his mother, because mentors invested in him as a young person. We also focus on equipping diverse families. So that means that we equip families as they come to us to help lead their children in faith and faith formation. It could be that they have a traditional family of mom, dad, and the nuclear family at home. It could be that they have an extended family living with them at home. It could be that they're living with caregivers who may not be related by blood, but who are in fact just as important to them as any biological family would be. And so when we engage with families and we focus on families, that's important. And if we think about this, it's only logical, right? If we have them coming to us in youth group or religious education or whatever form we have it, even if we see them once a week or twice a week, at most we maybe have 40 to 80 hours with them throughout the course of the year, whereas families have 3,000 hours with them throughout the course of the year. So if we want to make the most impact on the day-to-day life of young people and to help faith matter more to them, then we need to be focusing on families. And then the next 3, belonging, identity, and purpose, are really at the center of the tasks of youth. Right? What are we trying to figure out when we're young people? We're trying to figure out where we belong, who we are, and what our purpose is. And so when we think about what we're doing in ministry, those 3 key questions, those 3 central pieces to our development as young people need to be present and the center focus. So what does it mean to belong as a young person? And what does it mean to belong to a community of faith? What does it mean to be made in the image and likeness of God, to belong to Christ and to center my identity in Christ? What does it mean that God has called me to have purpose, to have meaning, to serve him, and to make a difference in the world? And how do I discover that? And then finally, the seventh discipleship emphasis is on leading change. We know that all of these 6 discipleship emphases are wonderful and they matter and they're important, but they can only happen if they happen within the whole ecosystem. So it's not just about incorporating these into, say, a youth ministry or a religious education program, but it's also about shifting the culture around us, shifting the structures and the environments in which we do them. So it's leading change in our community so that we can shift what we do as a whole community, as a parish, as a diocese, etc., towards relational discipleship. The way that we focus on doing these things is through what we call the leadership growth cycle, starting with awareness of the issue, moving to engagement and engaging in change around the issue for my own self, actively seeking out ways that I can change and learn and grow, and then eventually to become a champion for the cause for others. And so this is the focus that we have when we are creating resources. And this is how we focus on implementing the 7 discipleship emphases into our own ministry context and into our resources. And we have many, many resources available for you. Most of these are free or low cost to you. So you'll see a handout in the webinar that you can access that has a link to our website, and you can access all of these things. We have all sorts of resources, including a personalized 10 by 10 quiz that takes about 2 minutes. You can get some practical bite-sized resources that are curated for you. Most of these are coming in the form of what we call quick tips. Quick tips are one-page guides that identify a question with a tangible answer and a way to implement some of these practices around relational discipleship into your ministry. They also link you to an additional resource from one of our many partners. So a quick tip might have a question like, how do I get parents more involved in my ministry? And we'll have 3 ideas of what you can do to immediately implement something into your ministry. And it's going to be simple steps that anyone can take in almost any ministry context, whether you're at a parish or in a campus ministry, or whether you're in a city or suburban or rural context, whatever it looks like. And those are available to you, and they'll also link you to partners who have more details and more resources around that same topic. So these are just some of the examples of questions that you can find on our website under once you take the quiz. Those will come to you, and you'll also get a link to access all of our resources, all of our quick tips in the library. We also offer what we call the relational discipleship inventory. This is a little bit longer assessment that helps you to focus on these 7 different areas, these discipleship emphases, and sort of gauge how you're doing in each of those areas. It could be that you're doing wonderfully, or it could be that you need a little work. And it's not meant to have any bearing on what or judgment on your ministry, but rather to help you as a tool to think about where you are in those areas, how you can learn and grow. You are also able to take this inventory again. So once you click on the link, you take it, you'll get emails with your results. And if you're going through your own growth process, let's say you engage with some of our materials and you want to see, okay, where am I doing now in my ability to lead change? You can take it again and see how you've grown and compare your results. And you'll see an assessment that looks something like this. One of the things we are most proud of at 10 by 10 is our relational discipleship kickstart. This is a 10-session series of about 30-minute sessions each, which you can discover different tips, strategies, and some of the best of what we're discovering around research and youth ministry, and help to implement them in your ministry context. So it will talk about things like all of these 7 discipleship emphases, how to implement them. It'll also help you create a personalized plan for your ministry and how you can move forward in change. That's available for free to anyone. You can access that through our website as well. And that is, I will say, as someone who worked in youth ministry for a long time, who worked in pastoral ministry for a long time, I wish there had been something like this when I started ministry. I was just kind of thrown in with my theology degree and said, okay, go hang out with young people and figure out how to bring them to Jesus. What I love about the Relational Discipleship Kickstart is it gives all these practical tools and tips for how to already start with relational discipleship. And if I had had that when I was 22 and starting out in ministry, I would have gotten through so many more bumps and bruises of figuring it all out, and had so much less stress around my first job in ministry. The final resource that or the second to last resource we offer are what we call deep dives. These are different learning journeys created by our partners that help you to implement the 7 discipleship emphases in your ministry. So if you wanted to focus specifically on something like personal growth, there's going to be 2 or 3 deep dives that you can go into and say, okay, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to take 4 to 6 weeks to just really focus on myself, spend an hour perhaps a week to go a little bit deeper in my own spirituality. Or I really want to focus on how to better create teams of mentors. There's different deep dives that go further into that as well. We will have some coming up in the near future on things like mental health, things like serving within a particular ethnic context and how to learn to do that in your own context. So these are all meant to connect you with partners across denominational lines who are doing great work and who are able to speak to the needs that you have in ministry. And then finally, we also offer some senior leader resources. So we know that senior leaders in particular, our pastors, our priests, deacons, directors of religious ed, directors of evangelization, business managers, etc., people who are making key decisions about what is going on in the parish and how things are changing, have an outsized impact on youth ministry. In the Catholic Church, we all know how important the pastor is for the life of the parish. And so we've created resources for senior leaders to be able to incorporate into their ministry and to look at, as well as for if you are a youth minister or DRE or someone who is working in the trenches, as we say, to share with other leaders in your parish. These were created by Barna and coordinated through Barna, the Barna Institute, if you're familiar with them. They're one of the leading researchers in faith-based ministry and in the Christian sphere. So there's sermon outlines, mini journals on youth trends, articles, discussion kits, all sorts of things that you can access as well on our website. And you can see some of the other key partners who were important in helping to create those resources and guide them, including Marathon Youth Ministry, which is a Catholic youth ministry organization. So those are some of our resources that are available for you. And you can also see, as I said, this is an ecumenical movement, and it is a movement that requires partners. We cannot do this alone. We have a small staff at 10 by 10, and we are trying to reach 10 million young people. And we are here to amplify the voice of youth ministers and of leaders within the church, and also of our partners, to connect you with partners across the country and across the denominational landscape to be able to find what you need. And we have over 110 partners, and you can see many of them here, who are just sharing wonderful resources And I can say that as a Catholic who has spent all of my life, not only in Catholic pastoral ministry, but also in Catholic schools, and has done some interfaith ministry, but mostly in the church. The things that I've learned and gained from this collaboration, learning and gaining from folks who I probably wouldn't have talked to outside of 10 by 10, from denominations that I would have thought had nothing to really add to my life as a Catholic youth minister, has been amazing. And it has been such a joy to be able to work not only as a content director, but just to learn from all of the wonderful things that people are doing. So I hope that if you engage with our resources, and as you engage with our resources, you too will find that all of these organizations are just so helpful to you in your ministry. So finally, this QR code, hopefully if you are at a computer, you can scan and use. That'll take you to the 10 by 10 website. You can also connect with us on social media. And you also have the flyer, which will also have a direct link to our website. You can find there our senior leader resources, our youth leader tools, which include all of these resources that I outlined for you, as well as more about 10 by 10 and our movement. And with all of that said, I am so grateful that you have joined us today to learn a little bit more about what we're doing. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I know I didn't get too deep into the research and some of what it tells us, but I'm more than happy to answer questions. And I wanted to say most of all that I am so grateful for each of you, for all that you do in ministry, whatever role you're in, for your commitment to young people, for the ways that you are engaged with trying to continue to share the good news of Jesus Christ in our world. And it is an honor to be able to walk alongside all of you as fellow disciples in all you do, and to see the amazing things that you are doing. So I will be praying for you. I wish many blessings upon your ministry. And again, thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Maybe we can leave that barcode up there for a while, or that QR code up there for a little bit in case people are still wanting to access that. Yes, thank you so much for sharing this. I don't know, is 10 by 10 new? You're muted again.
I did it again, sorry.
There you go. That's okay.
I was trying to catch my breath there. 10 by 10 officially launched last year. So as an organization, we're about 2 years old, but it has been in the works for about the past 5 years as an outgrowth of Fuller Youth Institute, which many of you, if you're involved in youth ministry, may know. Fuller Youth Institute is a big researcher and mover and shaker in the youth ministry world. And so this is what we are trying to do to help shift the reality of what it means to be in the church. If we look at our parishes, we know that young people are leaving, and so I want to change that, and we want to change that at 10 by 10 to help people discover this full and abundant life that Jesus Christ has for us. And so our goal is to do that in 10 years, and hopefully in 10 years we won't have to exist anymore, which means I will need to find a new job, but that would be so great to be able to say what I do is not needed because the church is alive and thriving and young people are alive with the Spirit of Jesus Christ.
Oh, absolutely. Most definitely. Well, thank you for all the good work you're doing also, and your team at 10 by 10. Got a question here. How can we access some of the research behind these efforts?
Absolutely. So there is some links to some of that. A lot of the research is available through our partner organizations. So the big three that we are basing a lot, or four, I should say, that we're basing a lot of our research around are the Barna Institute, which I talked about, the Barna Group, excuse me, the Pine Tops Foundation as well, which is a evangelical foundation that does research around church and youth ministry. The other Catholic institution is the Springtide Institute, Springtide Research Institute, which many of you may have heard of. They have excellent studies every year around youth and religion. And they just came out with some on the pandemic, with some on mental health. Also, their latest research was on sacred moments, sacred encounters, and sacred spaces. So that was very exciting as well. And while you generally have to purchase their full reports, Springtide also has smaller sections of those available for free if you're interested in looking. And then finally, of course, being involved with Fuller Seminary, we are an arm of Fuller Youth Institute, which is another huge research group. The two, they have 3 books now, particularly that are that have their research. The first is Sticky Faith, which many of you may have heard of, came out in 2013 or so. Which I will say that book changed my entire perspective on ministry. If I were to recommend one book on ministry, period, it would be that book, Sticky Faith, which is about how we get faith to stick with young people. So that 5-to-1 ratio I talked about, that's directly from Sticky Faith. They also have a second follow-up book to that, another research project called Growing Young. Both of those are available in print and on ebook as well, if you're an ebook reader like I am. And then there is a new book that just came out, and I'm the worst, I should know. I believe it's called 3 Big Questions, but that you can go to the Fuller Youth Institute website to find those. So those are the four of the big places that we're looking, and then we'll also be commissioning new research on some other topics around this that hopefully we'll make available to folks coming out soon.
Great, very helpful. So if a church or a parish would want to, how would they partner with 10 by 10, or a subscription, or just some of those details might be helpful?
Great. So the first and easiest thing to do is to go to our website. You do not have to have a subscription to use most of our resources. Some of our deep dives may have a cost associated with them, but most are specifically meant to be kept low cost so that anyone can access them, whatever economic context you might find yourself in. So the Relational Discipleship Kickstart, that is free to everyone to use. So you can look at that. All of our quick tips, free to use. So you can also get signed up there on our mailing list. So if you want to get updates, especially as new deep dives come out or new quick tips, things like that, that's all on our website. And you can also follow us on social media. That's also a great place to find what's going on with 10 by 10.
Awesome, awesome. So as you look back over your, I don't know, 20 plus years in youth ministry, parish ministry, what are some of the biggest changes with kids today that
Oh, great question.
that we need to know to be able to bring Jesus to them, right? Make
So
the faith stick.
I will start with a funny story. I still remember my second year in youth ministry. I graduated from college in 2007. That may make some of you feel a little old. It may make some of you feel very young. I don't know. And I remember sitting with a bunch of other youth ministers at a McAllister's in Fishers, Indiana, for those of you who are here in Indiana, looking at our friend who had just gotten the very first iPhone. And that completely changed the way that we did ministry. It's not the only thing that has changed in young people, but the fact that we live in a digital age has completely changed. The way kids interact with the world is totally different. And I can tell you the difference between the young people I worked with in those first 5 years versus the next 20 or so. Right, so knowing the digital world that they live in is important. Along with that, what we know about Gen Z is that, one, they are way more diverse than any other generation in history. So ethnicity, race, racial justice, all of those things are extremely important, and the way that we interact with them and the way that we create our own cultural competencies is extremely important. They are also an extremely skeptical generation. They are skeptical of the church, and they are growing up in what we would call a post-Christian culture. It's not that they necessarily have formed their own opinions about the church, although many times they have, and many times they've been hurt by the church. But if you think about this generation, they are the generation that came of age after the 2005 scandals around sexual abuse. And then just as they were emerging into adulthood, they encountered first the reports out of Pennsylvania with another round of sexual abuse scandals, and the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the turmoil that we saw in the church around all of the things that were associated with that, all of the issues of racial justice that came around in 2020. And so for many of us, myself included, who grew up with a church that was, for the most part, trustworthy and intact, it's the opposite for them, right? They see a church that oftentimes is full of division, and that has been, in their eyes, proven over and over again to be untrustworthy. So they're extremely skeptical. But at the same time, they're extremely compassionate. They are extremely committed to justice, and they're very giving. And they're also very entrepreneurial, right? If they see a problem or they see an opportunity, they go and they grab it, and they're like not interested in waiting around for us, right? So that there's a lot of hope and joy, and they are actually very open to the message of Jesus. That's one thing that came out really strongly in the Springtide research. If you look at that, what they found was, while there's a very low level of trust for the church, the Gen Z and into Gen Alpha actually is very interested in the message of Jesus and finds it very compelling. So they like Jesus a lot, but they think that the church is very hypocritical. So if there are two sort of strategies that we can engage in as a church, it would be to build their trust, right? To show that they belong, to show that when we say everyone is welcome and salvation is for everyone, we put our money where our mouth is. And that that also our teaching and our catechesis, everything that we do should be coming from the teaching of Jesus. That's not to say we get rid of the catechism or all of the good thing that we do. Of course, the sacraments are encounters with Jesus, right? So like they're central, but it needs to be focused on Christ, and we need to show them how it's relevant to their lives. And the other thing I'll say, I could talk about this for hours, as you can tell. The other thing I will also say is what research shows us again and again is that young people are not interested in hearing about salvation in some way, shape, or form in the future when they die. They really couldn't care less. Because, right, even if we just think about the longevity of their lives, the things that have shifted in my lifetime, we've gone from a life expectancy of maybe 60 to 70 years old to now many of them can expect to live well into their 90s, right? So eternal salvation is not an immediate need for them in the way it sometimes has been for previous generations. But they do respond very well to the ways that Christ can transform our lives in the here and now, both individually, right? So maybe it's talking about addiction or mental health, or the ways that Christ can transform the things that we don't love about ourselves. And also when we look at society, right? The way that the kingdom of God is breaking out among us, and that Christ and and Christians who really truly are trying to do what Jesus wanted us to do in society can make long-term changes and transform broken structures and really make society better. So they love to talk about issues of justice and systemic change as well, which is very in line with our church, right? The Catholic social teaching has a wealth of things that we could bring to young people. So yeah, that's great. I will also add, I'm just going to keep going.
Please do so.
that, when we're doing things like when we're focused, research also shows us when we're talking about issues of justice and we're talking about issues of service, that we need to make the connection between charity and justice, that those two go together, that they flow from a relationship with Jesus Christ, and they're motivated by our love for Christ and our love for others, that they're found in the Bible and in our tradition. And also that service needs to be a long-term thing. So it's not just the one and done service projects that we are used to, even though those are good, like there's nothing wrong with them, but rather that when we do that, we tie it into bigger issues within society. So if we're going, let's say, to do a Habitat for Humanity, a lot of folks will do that for like an alternate spring break. That's great, wonderful, but also to talk about then issues around housing inequality and what's going on in a community that creates this reality, and also to talk about how we can continue to be involved and to do projects that continue to be involved in that issue as we go forward. So it's not just a one and done, but then we're going to say, okay, now we're going to connect with this local group in our area that's working on housing inequality and how we can help, even as young people, right? And that's tied to that idea of purpose, right? We need purpose, and we're helping them to find their purpose and to discover these issues so that they can engage with the world as people of faith.
Mhm. Well, that is very, very helpful, and I feel very inspired and motivated. I know sometimes, we can look at the negatives of a generation, but really focusing on the positive and the gifts that they have to share and how we can tap into them, definitely is one way to build their trust, right? Yeah, and accompany them in their lives. So thank you so much, Shannon, for sharing all of this with us. I encourage all of you to head on over to the 10 by 10 website to see more information and more resources. And as Shannon mentioned, thank you for all of your hard work and continued prayers for you and for the young people in our world today. I invite you to, well, first of all, wanted to talk a little bit about, we always offer a discount, 25% off using code webinar416 when purchasing at Ave Maria Press. The orange book there on the top, Fat Luther, Slim Pickens, is the book that Shannon co-wrote. And then you mentioned these 3 books here on the bottom. You want to say anything about those?
Absolutely. So these 3 books are ones that I've used in ministry from Ave, especially around a lot of these same issues. So we'll go from right to left because that's we'll go the opposite. Witness by Lenny DiLorenzo, which is just about learning to share our faith stories, which is a great resource to share for you to use, but also to share with other adults, to just be able to share their story with young people. The second one is Everyday Witness from Sister Teresa Ricard, which she's the founder of Renew International, or excuse me, former president of Renew International. Just a fantastic book about what it means to live out our witness every day, right? Because if we want to build trust, it's about living out our witness every day. And then the last book on the far left, One Disciple at a Time by Everett Fritz, who was the president of Focus Ministries, which is the campus ministry organization, is about it's about relational discipleship. How do we encounter Jesus together and form one disciple at a time? What would our ministry look like if we shifted to focusing on what's best for one person to grow in discipleship with Jesus Christ? And that's relational discipleship at its finest. So 3 really great books from Ave that I love. In spite of being an Ave author, I highly recommend them to you. That are just great for really focusing on relational ministry in your own context.
Absolutely. And the One Disciple at a Time and Everyday Witness are on sale right now. So that's a deep, deep discount. So we, go ahead to our website. So the 25% off would not apply to those two, but to the other ones, certainly. All right. Well, we got some good resources. We got some great information and some places to take a look at for more research or more information. So I invite you all to join us next Tuesday. Abigail Jorgensen is going to talk to us about how we can respond, how we can help our parishioners when they experience a miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss, what to do, what not to do, but really in the context of your ministry. So I hope you can join us for that. Shannon, again, thank you. It's always lovely to have you here with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody who's joined us today. Have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.